On the inside.
I'm tired.
We got to stay up late to celebrate, we got a birthday.
I had 9 protocols.
It's figuring out that.
You ready, Paul?
Wait. Okay, someone coming in. If you want to just go ahead and start and I'll try to get this worked out.
We'll call this special meeting slash public forum on the Spring Street stormwater issues and concerns meeting to order, June 7th at 5:30 p.m. The format tonight is going to be pretty informal. The residents of Spring Street that have concerns or questions could ask those concerns and questions to the body here. The only thing that we ask is that you allow the body here to answer those questions fully without interruption. And then there could be some rebuttal, but the rebuttal, can be, the rebuttal has to be without interruption too. Because what happens is if we have too much interruption and back and forth when people are trying to answer questions, it's just not productive and you're probably not going to get the answers that fully that you want. And then, that we're going to be here until 8 o'clock, which I don't think we should. We should be out of here by the latest 7, and that's the latest. So I'll let our city manager just kind of introduce everybody and whoever's on the line, and then you all can ask your questions.
Thanks.
I'm City Police, Mitchell City Manager. We have here tonight, Public Works Superintendent John Workman, City Engineer Tom Brown, our Code Enforcement Director Ashley Carr, our Wastewater Plant Superintendent Drew Eddy, and also Councilman Will Hyman is here as well. Chris Lynn,
Chris Lane, resident from Spring Ave.
Tom Lopez, President also of Spring Ave.
So who do we have on
We have,
Teams?
once we didn't put that,
He can hear, so
that's Dan Daly with the DEP, he's one of the inspectors that was the, signed off on the walkthrough that was done.
Dan, can you mute yourself and say hello? All right. Of course, I have to make a tweak on the audio.
Is there someone from the Association Engineering representing the city? There's a reason for that?
I don't see any answer.
Okay, and so in as much as all engineering, all that plus Mr. Brown will handle that, is responsible for that?
Do we have the volume fixed yet, or still working?
Dan, can you speak again? Okay, I think we can hear you now.
All right, so
The all I'm hearing from her is really close to good operator devices on what I can do.
Okay. I just have to move you closer. Hopefully you can hear.
And so we have Mr. Bailey from the DEP Mr. Bailey's function and division that he works within, he was the inspection division that came through for the walkthrough, but Mr. Bailey is not able to speak to MS4 situations because he is not an MS4 employee from that group, is that correct?
Yes, that MS4 is a totally different program. This project was not an MS4 project, so you're not gonna have any MS4 from the DEP, because it was not an MS4 project. We did not work under the permit of MS4. The permit of MS4 is WV 0116025. This project is under NPDES permit WV 0023302, so not MS4. So then we also have a construction permit that they have to go along with the NPDES permit, WVR 110611 is a construction permit. So this project, there's no MS4 in this project.
Either way, though, the city is still incumbent to follow MS4 guidelines throughout the greater part of the city. So if you could explain to me then, if this project was not under MS4, what is under MS4 in the city?
Oh,
Danny, with us? Did you hear that?
Technology is wonderful. How about you, sir?
You have that. Let's see, send that link out here.
Did you not receive it?
No.
I mean, really, the MS4 document, the MS4 covers the entire city.
No, he's having trouble hearing. So, I mean, I can't hear what you're saying.
I can hear,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you speaking just fine as long as you're close to the computer.
So what, do you have a specific question for him?
If we get the link shot there, we could use the mic on my computer to give them more central location here.
clane@rli3.com.
Correct. There we go.
This 10 minutes doesn't count towards the total, does it?
Hey, Dan, can you hear me?
Hey, Dan, can you hear me now? I can hear you fine.
I'll use my exterior speakers as well.
What's that?
I'll use my speakers as well.
If that works for you guys.
Yeah, that might work better.
Okay.
So we good to go now? I believe so.
So what the question was what is governed by the MS4 agreement? And Drew stated that, this project was outside of the MS4, but I'm asking, based upon what I understand, the MS4 document covers the entire city of Clarksburg. And so, are those particular cutouts or carve-outs that aren't denoted in the city's permit for MS4? Because that's what I just want to understand what's covered.
This MS4 permit and the NPDF permit of 002330 are totally separate, and they can't be combined. Because you're talking about combined sewer or an MS4, it's two totally different programs, and two totally different permits.
Yes, but if one permit says that it covers the entire city, one can't supersede it.
It covers MS4. That's not, what we worked on was sewer pipes. And you can't, they're not the same permit.
Right, but one thing can't go contradict the other.
But they don't.
I guess, nonetheless,
If I may real quick, my understanding of the project that occurred in Spring Ave was, you had a combined sanitary sewer and storm sewer system initially. And the project was separating the sanitary sewer and the stormwater sewer into two separate isolated systems. Is that correct? You looking at Dan to answer? That's a echo. I'm outside. Your mic's still on? Your mic's still on. Sorry, Dan, I think we got a little reverb going on.
Yeah, I heard it. I just want to hear somebody was just directing for me that question. Okay?
I was directing the question toward Drew, but the reverb, I think that ought to respond.
I'm on.
There we go. That should be better.
So this project is based off the CSO federal registry combined system or eliminating CSOs. So this project now, once you do it, then later down, you could go back and it can become an MS4 project now. But that's a different funding agency. It's not coming from the SRF like this project came from.
I understand that, but to simplify, we're essentially taking a singular system and separating it into two isolated
It's
systems
removing the rainwater from
from the
the
sewer.
sewer system. Yes.
Okay. So that's my general high-level understanding of the project. As far as the stormwater system, the new stormwater system itself, does it not have to follow MS4 guidelines, or does it?
As far as I know, in fact, I got started in this later, but The purpose of it, as Drew said, was to separate the projects, and therefore the same storm drainage was put back to the essential same as it was previous with some enhancements.
I understand that, but to my understanding, when you had a combined system initially, everything ultimately traveled downstream toward the sewer plant, where the sewer plant has to treat everything, and you essentially have to follow all the guidelines of processing and treating it as if it was all sewage waste, as opposed to if it's just storm drain sewer. My understanding is separating the singular system into two isolated systems. You now have a sanitary sewer system that ultimately goes to the sewer plant that has to follow those original same guidelines of treating sanitary sewer. And now you have a new isolated system that's purpose of capturing, collecting, processing storm water, rainwater. And my understanding of permits, DEP regulations is that the capturing and management of stormwater would fall under the MS4 guidelines. So the new half of the project of the stormwater system that's collecting and processing rainwater, does that part of the project fall under the MS4, as I'm understanding it does?
I don't see that it would take any additional construction projects or whatnot at that point in time, and I know there was none contemplated with this project to start with as part, and to bring it any closer into MS4 than it was before, except for, again, the separation of the stormwater and the sanitary, which helps the whole system, the system as a whole anyway.
Okay. And I'll apologize there if I asked you to clarify that a little bit better there. I'm just curious if the rainwater, the stormwater, or the system doesn't MS4 regulate rainwater and stormwater within the city limits, within the city boundary, and even beyond the city boundary in some cases?
In some cases, yes.
So my understanding is the stormwater portion of the project, what I'm gonna call the new system, that's there to capture the stormwater and to essentially bypass that stormwater from going to the sewer plant where it previously went to, would fall under the blanket of the MS4 guidelines.
And again, not that I'm aware of at this point. I know more now than what I knew before, Chris, because when you brought that up and sent forth the emails, I looked at it more. But as I look at the project was approved by the DEP under the sanitary sewer system for separation, and nothing else was contemplated with regard to that. And I don't see that we are adding anything into the storm drainage that would need to be addressed by the MS4 other than what we did.
Yes, but even in keeping it the same, it would still have to be regulated by it. So, again, absent of any change, the MS4 regulates that process. And so, ergo, it is an MS4 project. Even if without the change, it still has to be followed within the previous guidelines, even if.
But it did follow the guideline. It would have followed the guidelines because there was no changes made to what was existing.
But so what was existing should be in guideline then.
So
The whole city is not totally in guidelines.
Okay, but it should be.
If we had $100 million maybe, or maybe $200 million, it would be.
Well, but particularly in areas where there is deficiency or problems, when we know that we're out of guideline, that's where we end
No,
up.
we're working on those, Mr.
Well-
Lopez. We're working on those as best we can with the funding we have.
Well, so then let's rolling back to, can you specifically explain to me, you're saying you just became aware? Can you
No, I started in the middle of this project. The project was partially designed before I became the city engineer. But as I understood at that point in time, at no point in time did we contemplate anything with regard to the MS4 because there was no direct violations that I could see with regard to that. I mean, what we've talked about here, and I think we really need to hear your main concerns, because what we've talked about here is curbs, essentially. And as I went out and looked at the area that was, and that's the only part that was maybe somewhat deficient. And I could only find one area where the curb was totally deficient, possibly on the whole project.
Well, unfortunately, Mr. Brown, we're gonna have to disagree with you because this project has been 2 years that we have been coming here. And so I want to specifically, so that I can understand, when exactly per date did you get involved in this
Probably
project?
4 years ago.
4 years ago. Okay, so this project went,
Actually, probably further back than that. It goes back further than 5. It was started before I came to work here in 2017.
okay. So when I'm saying 2 years, to be clear, we have had 2 years ago, the city showed up knocking on our doors and said, you guys have to move your cars. You're illegally parked. Well, what are you talking about? We're starting this project here. We're going to start tearing all your streets apart, separating everything, doing all this stuff. And your streets are going to be torn up for several weeks. And you can't park here, move your cars. Well, what are you guys talking about? No one told us a word about any of this. Okay, and so back to the overall gravity and body of problems, that we're not just at one issue to discuss, to get through, because we have such comprehensive long-term damage, and the way that it's been handled so inefficiently for so long is going to take some resolve. And so, my question still spins to 2 years ago when we started. All these issues were immediately brought to the forefront. Okay, and we were here repeatedly with questions, concerns, complaints, all of these things that it's taken 2 years to get to just have a conversation like this. And so, the assertion of we need to quickly go through this and there's only some curb issues, I guess is about as far off in outer space as you could be in relationship to how we as residents and taxpayers feel for what we've gone through, and given the gravity of the potential things that we've had to deal with and what it's going to take to correct it. So I apologize if we're taking too much time and talking about too many things, but we've not been allowed to attend meetings. We've been denied the opportunity to speak at several different events. And so we have not had the opportunity to discuss things. In addition, as you know, there's been a tremendous amount of issues with document suppression, information suppression, and a variety of things. So we will have to take our time and go through this, so I apologize. But continuing, this project from the very onset was not explained. There was nothing ever communicated, and going back to per the MS4 agreement, okay, in that MS4 document, okay, it specifically speaks to public communication that needs to be had, all the different forms that need to be had to notify the public, blah. None of that has happened. Okay, and so I guess to truly get to the root of all of this, okay, because it's now way more than curbs, we have to understand, and we'll understand specifically what the MS4 document covers in this city. And if we don't have enough money, okay, as you said, we recognize we're in violation. Okay, when you're in violation potentially in an area that's had complaints for 2 years. And so if it's a budgetary issue, which I'll take you at your word, then we're going to have to get into the finance department and understand why we don't have the money to correct known violations in areas where we're doing projects that we've spent $3 million in, because that's a big problem. And so back to project inception, and if there wasn't money in place and in hand to do the project correctly, why did we even start it, and how was it designed in the beginning, to take in consideration of all those issues. Okay, and so back to that's why I don't know, why the project engineer isn't here, and I'm just trying to understand on the most basic level here, for starters, to the MS4. Guys, what's the purpose of a curb? Purpose of a curb is to
control runoff.
control
From the
runoff.
street, from the street,
To control runoff. So
from the street.
from the street, correct. Okay, so if we don't have curbs and we're trying to control, putting all this money into stormwater, sewer separation, control the runoff, if there's no curbs, it's not gonna work. I'm not an engineer. I'm a boy from Northview Park. Okay, I could put that together pretty quick. And so whoever designed any project whose basis and emphasis is to collect, corrugate, maintain stormwater, it can't happen if there's no curb. And we have discussed this issue over and over to the point where I believe that, one of the Thrasher engineers at a meeting made the comment that, well, they would dig drains through the city of Clarksburg then. Okay, and okay, you guys heard that comment, that meeting, okay? I believe Mr. Hyman, you were at that meeting, and the engineer from Thrasher made that comment. I know Mr. Police and I have discussed it, okay? And so to the end of this isn't gonna be a quick conversation. We've had dramatic issues like that have occurred. And so back to basic concept here. How can we have a stormwater drainage separation, whatever you want to call it, project, not have curbs?
Because it was there strictly to separate the storm drain from the sanitary sewer. That is the reason for the project.
Okay, but it wouldn't work right if the water can't drain because there's no curbs.
If I may real quick, my concern from what I'm hearing is, I believe the original intent of the project was there's a lot of material flowing to the sewer plant. It has a lot of cost, it has a lot of infrastructure in place to treat that material. I believe DEP recognizes that, and they're trying to work with municipalities, not just Clarksburg, but all over, to help reduce the amount of material that's going to the plants, to help reduce cost and strain on municipalities. I believe that's why funding was provided for the project to separate sanitary sewer from stormwater sewer, to be able to reduce the impact to the plant. So from my understanding, I believe a large focus was placed on what can we do to reduce impact to the plant. And the easiest way to do that is to remove the stormwater from what is being sent to the plant. Unfortunately, especially what I'm hearing today, what I've heard about the last couple of years, I don't believe much thought was put into what is being done with the stormwater once it's separated from that combined system. The stormwater, to my understanding, is regulated by the MS4. But once it is separated and isolated from the sanitary sewer, and it's no longer part of a combined system, then it would need to be regulated by the MS4 permit. It doesn't seem that project engineering and project oversight at the beginning of the project took in consideration having to handle, process, and treat the stormwater under the MS4 requirements. To my understanding, part of MS4 and part of capturing the rainwater, the city is responsible for the first few inches of rainfall. To capture, collect, direct, and then have outfalls available for periodic testing. And as you just heard a little bit ago, the purpose of the curb is to channel runoff on the city streets. Now, which is identified as a coverage area in their MS4 permit. The city, I reviewed the MS4 permit that's on the city's website, accepts responsibility for managing and maintaining this MS4 permit, regulations within it. If the city's agreeing to manage and maintain those first few inches of rainfall, how is the city able to capture, channel, and direct that rainfall to outfalls to be tested periodically to ensure there's no contaminants if the city does not have full BMPs in place and BMPs, best manageable practices, which would be a curb, that'd be classified as BMP. To help channel the water from the street surface to the stormwater system and then on to the outfalls. Now, essentially, to try to sum it up from beginning to end, that's what I see as the concerns and some of the oversights. I can agree with Tom that, there probably is $200 million worth of violations across the city. I feel all the violations are intentional. No. Do I feel a lot of violations is just contributing of an aging city, trying to make modern paths? Yes. But here's a project that was done relatively recently. I believe at some point it started about 7 years ago. Well, that's relatively recently, where sanitary waste was taken into consideration, but the residual stormwater that is being isolated and separated from that sanitary waste was not taken into consideration. And I agree that if the city had a much larger stack of funds available, you can go around and correct every issue. I think to Tommy's point earlier, with inefficiencies and inconveniences to residents, I think it's pretty reasonable for us to be up here questioning and wondering why an issue that was created by separating the system, by isolating the stormwater, an issue that is recognized by the MS4 permit, was not addressed by the city in the inception of this project, and why it's taking multiple years to get to the point to have an open dialogue from concerned residences raising the issue. But fundamentally, that's my concern.
Let's, from my behalf, let's skip forward a little bit. So, to Mr. Brown's comment, this is about curbs. As to multiple issues beyond the curbs, the inspection, let's walk backwards. So I requested information from Mr. Police in writing sometime in February. I asked for all the documents on the project, all the blueprints of my street, yada, yada, yada. I was not given that information until April the 20-something, 26th, I believe. And in that information that I received, just as you might imagine, the blueprints of my street weren't even included in it. They were omitted. So I had to use a copy there from the DEP sent to me. And certainly I think that Dreiser Engineering openly suggested to give me information. Is that correct?
Yes, they did not.
Say that again, please.
No, sir, they did not.
They did not. Are you familiar with the FOIA request information and the email that you provided in FOIA disclosure from Dreiser Engineering telling you not to give me information?
They said they did not give you information. If you wanted it from them, you would have to request it through their DEP website.
But they advised you not to give me information.
At no point in time did they ever advise me not to give you information.
I'll skip that. Steve, I would ask you to please reread your FOIA disclosed emails because that's certainly not a truthful statement. And I'll stop it at that. So, Mr. Brown, it's my understanding that the drains on Spring Avenue, were to be removed and replaced as they were. You reiterated that. So the drain in front of my property was not properly installed up against the curb. Water runs past it, as it does the same with the drain across at Mr. Lane's property. And it's taken 2 years round and round, but the blueprints say that those drains were supposed to be removed and replaced, same location as they were. And that wasn't done. So just from a straight, and there's multiple other ones that aren't abutting the curb as well. Another one at the top of the street, you guys have it, a concrete splash put on it to try to direct the water. Okay, that's just still errors that continue. And so I'm trying to understand there, how do we get to the place where the drains for the history of time were abutting the curb and the blueprints, the project documents called for remove and replace as they were up against there. And then how did we get away from there with no documentation and the fact that we know the drains don't work? I mean, that makes no sense. Again, it's just common sense, Northview Park. Okay, I've got a multitude of videos. The water runs past the drain, runs down the curb and misses the drains. You fixed his on one side, you didn't fix mine. Okay, so how are the drains not where they're supposed to be per the blueprint?
From my understanding, and this comes from Johnny going out and looking at it and looking at what was also there on Google Earth prior to, the drains that were there were not against the curb. They were away from the curb, the same distance as what is there now.
No.
They were all replaced exactly the same as they were, except for that one over by Chris's house. It was different, and we went back and fixed that one.
Okay, no, that's not correct. The drains were not separated there from the curb, but even if they were, once you saw that the water is running past them and the drain isn't working, as an engineer, would that not be enough trigger to go, something's wrong?
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't let you finish.
No, it's okay. I'm just trying to be common sense. I don't want to even be here going through all this. It's ridiculous. The bottom line is the water's run past the drains, on multiple drains.
At times, and when I design drains, I design them to the best that they can function at different places. And sometimes there's some bypass on some of the storm drain inlets. They don't pick up all the drains, all the water that's coming down the road.
But it never did that in the past.
Well,
Okay, and then continuing because there's issues and because there's multiple ones and because the blueprints, they're supposed to be on the curb, but I've got photos and documents. You guys replaced it yourself in 2019. I've got photos of Sammy Lopez in the drain digging, replacing it. I've lived there 22 years. The drains abutted the curb.
well, then that's something I can look at myself, but in accordance with both Thrasher Engineering and with our own investigation, they did not abut the curb. That's what I understand.
Okay. In addition to that, okay, they didn't, but the fact that everyone here is aware that the water's going past the drain. I mean, does it really take everybody in this room and all this time and energy to the next question, just on basic engineering? How much was the level of the street supposed to be raised in the project?
We milled the street and laid it back to where it was previously.
Okay, but you know that's not correct either, right? Because again, part of the neighbors' concerns, including mine, is that the street was not milled properly, and that in fact you erased the curb because the drains in the curb, okay, are here, and you guys blacktopped over top of the curb drains. So people like me, their stuff can't drain. Okay, and we've been here saying that and complaining that specific complaint for so long that it's not funny. And so,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
okay, and so again, back to people feeling extremely frustrated over a 2-year process of absolute ridiculousness. You asphalted over top of the drains. Certainly, that can't be correct, can it?
Over top of a drain.
The height of the
Totally
street,
closed the drain off.
that you raised the level of the street so high, and that's part of why there's no curbing throughout the city of Clarksburg. It isn't because it aged, it's because there's been inappropriate work done, and the grading has not been appropriate by all these different people. Our city workers do great work, but I think there's a lot of other people, the gas company, all these other people that come in and tear our streets up. The bottom line is the level of the street, because the grading is not, is raised and raised and raised. And so people have lost all their curb, like the situation in front of my house. Okay, you have taken all the curb because you've raised the street level inappropriately every time you asphalt and it's not graded properly. I mean, so what's somebody supposed to do? I mean, the level of the street wasn't supposed to be raised. But so here we are. How do we fix our drains? Okay, it's more than me, there's multiple people. So how, from an engineering standpoint, can that occur? It wasn't supposed to be raised, but it was. How, what's even the fix to it? I don't even, I'm not trying to ask you a magic 8-ball question. At the end of the day, everything's got a drain. The drains are blocked with asphalt.
I don't know of any drains that are covered up by asphalt.
Okay, well, I've been coming here for over a year.
I know some of them that have a half inch or an inch of asphalt on the bottom of like a 6-inch drain.
Okay, again, for you to
That
say
has a
that,
4-inch drain draining to it.
this is where we have difficulty as a council and where we have difficulty as a city. Okay, for your employee and the engineer to say that he wasn't aware of that. And you guys know how long that I have been coming here, showing pictures. Anybody could walk over there on that street and look for 2 minutes. Okay, this is back to the responsibility, okay, where this shouldn't even be banter back and forth. You guys know how long we've been here, and the city's supposed to be taking care of it, the city's supposed to be looking at it. It's ridiculous, okay? You can't even attest to what the current condition is, and though this has been 2 years, we're all here in this room, and we haven't even had a walk-through inspection where everybody can go, oh yeah, now I see what you're talking about. How can you sit here today and say you're not aware, I'm not sure, I don't know? Okay, you guys have seen the pictures. I've been there. I have pictures blown up this big, bottom in here. Okay, it's been going on for 2 years. It's all covered. Okay, so that's why we're in this situation. And we have to start taking other steps, because even here, we're pounding the ball around into no man's land. Okay, there's not enough information able to be provided here this evening. Okay, people still don't have answers. We haven't even gotten into where the MS4 committee is. It's supposed to be in place, whether this project's underneath of it or not. Okay, and so where's the MS4 committee? Why has that not been in place all these years?
Oh, I'm sorry, I took over as interim city manager in December. So you're referring to something that I was totally unaware that the city needs to participate in. We're looking into that through the sanitary sewer.
And ever since you brought it up, I have been on it. The first documentation that I have worked, I have been working on, I've been looking since May 11th. I think you brought it up, May 9th at the meeting.
That's probably when you were made aware of it, yes, Drew, but
That's
it's
when I
brought
was
up.
in the city
Right,
council meeting.
right.
So May 9th, you mentioned it. May 11th, I've already found documents on what to do. And it's a lot more complicated than just a committee city. That's not what, there's only a couple of these around the state, and it's not a committee where they sit and they discuss. They talk about issues, but that committee or council goes out and cleans the riverbanks and multiple other things. This is not something that you just start. It's way more complicated than that. Berkeley County is a really good one to look at, and then stormwater maps, where you pay for your runoff and how much square footage, all that, to help pay for it, because you have to, that advisory council would go out and you would focus on areas of the city that are the worst places that are flooded, and that's where you would go and work, and you would do volunteer events with the citizens and stuff like that. But it's not like a committee like the planning and zoning committee.
Understand. So,
On that topic there, I am going to have to disagree with you, Drew. On the city's MS4 permit that's on the city's website, and to your point, I believe it was well before your time because it carries Harry Falk's signature on this. It looks like he's the one who reviewed it and ultimately put it in place. And I believe you've been here for a brief period of time, so it's probably a lot to absorb and soak in a brief period of time, so I think that's understandable. But within the permit, the DEP asks a series of questions, and the city responds with a series of answers. In 15J, I'm going to read through 3 sections right here, 3 paragraphs. 15J, the question is, describe your education and outreach strategy targeting the general public. The city's answer to that question is to create a website that explains what MS4 is and why the city has developed the stormwater management plan. The website will contain links to fact sheets to the general public to educate them on how bad habits on an individual level can negatively impact the environment. Give examples such as picking up pet waste, disposing water properly instead of dumping it in stormwater drains. 15M has a question of describe your education outreach strategy targeting engineers, contractors, developers, review staff, and land use planners. The city responded with create a link to fact check sheets, new city ordinances dealing with stormwater runoff, and acceptable BMPs. Make each aware of new regulations and how they affect both the environment and their day-to-day operations. Notices will be inserted in the fire fee billing alerts, targeting audience of new website and the availability of information located at City Hall. And the final one, right here, 16H, says the question is state and describe your BMPs, indicate if BMP is part of the existing program. Now I'm confused with the answer here because BMPs is typically a device, construction device, like curbs, something like that. I guess the city took a little more liberal approach to it, and this is where we came up with the council. So their response is, a new stormwater advisory council will be developed consisting of city officials and general public that will meet regularly to review how the stormwater management plan is working, hear public comment, and make revisions as necessary. The advisory council will also be responsible for communicating with other environmental organizations on a regular basis. It does not state about cleanup or field events or organizing large things.
I'm just going based off what the other programs that do the same thing around the state.
I completely understand.
That's what we're going to base ours off of, is what other entities are doing the same.
Okay. I'm just reading the city's response to the DEP in your permit. So this is what the city told the DEP the city is going to do. I understand what you're saying you're looking to achieve there. But the city has already submitted a response to the DEP stating that they will form the Stormwater Advisory Council to be ready to discuss how the stormwater management plan is working, hear public comment, and make revisions as necessary. Not discrediting what you're looking to do. That does seem like a
Which
lot
that's
of work,
pretty much
a
what I'm
lot
saying.
to go
It's
into.
just adding that you're doing volunteer work as well, and the city will be working. That's where the stormwater tax comes in to help pay for the fund of cleaning up the river banks and stuff.
Correct, but this answer does not require that a volunteer group be put together. It simply says that a council will be put together to regularly review the stormwater management plan, hear public comment, and make revisions as necessary. Now, effectively, what we're doing here today, is what this describes for. Now, further down in 16J, they do have a question, describe at least 2 methods you plan to use to engage the public in your stormwater management plan. First method is involvement in the Stormwater Advisory Council. The second method is, as you point out, to volunteer with cleanup days. So the city has identified them as 2 separate tasks: establishing the council and working toward volunteer days. I don't see any reason or anything prohibiting the city from establishing the councils to go ahead and start reviewing the plan, hear public comments, concerns, to look at possible revisions that may be necessary to the plan. And while they're doing that, to strive and work towards setting up the volunteer days. Now, that doesn't seem to be an unreasonable or unachievable task. But to delay or prohibit forming the council and to start that public engagement because you're not able to facilitate the volunteer portion, I don't understand how that's acceptable. You know, it goes on to describe in the very next paragraph, you know, question of describe how you accommodate public participation in the decision-making process for your stormwater management plan. Now, the city's answer is the public will have the opportunity to serve on the Stormwater Advisory Council, as well as participate in meetings and voice opinions to city staff, who will organize cleanup days and other volunteer activities within the city. So it even describes that the public will have an opportunity to serve on the council and participate in meetings and voice opinions to staff, who will then in turn organize cleanup days and volunteer activities. So the chain and order of events here seems to be the council is going first, and the volunteering is discussed second.
I have a question. Does the DEP give any guidance on how to start a stormwater?
Here's the ordinance that created the city one. I guess my question is, Stormwater Advisory Council, if it was in place 2 years ago, do you think this would have prevented the issues on Spring Avenue? And
Absolutely.
if so, I mean, does it, is this kind of an extraneous type of thing that we're going after here? Because it sounds like the primary issue 2 years ago, when you invited me to your house to talk about it, it seems like the issue was Spring Avenue. This seems to have appeared over the last 6 months or so, starting back with our meeting that in the back room there, when you were present. And so I'm just kind of curious, it seems like we're dogpiling now, in my opinion. There's no, obviously it has to be done. And I believe there's a solution to be found for it. But, are we going after Spring Avenue, or are we going after, this kind of bureaucratic committee here that the city's required for? Because, now we're kind of segueing
And so in finding remedy for Spring Avenue, we will take every available remedy that the law affords us. Every program that manages every drop of dirt, every piece of asphalt.
Yeah.
Okay, and so being that this MS4 now, because there were so many difficulties that were not addressed appropriately, and because of the multitude and failures that we're all noting, it caused more and more digging.
Yes, but
to be done.
I mean, from what I heard from Mr. Brown was this project started 7 years ago, at least. And that document was signed when Harry was here. So that was 5 years before Harry started. So, it seems like to me that would have been unattainable to have a committee in place 5 years ago.
No, there was one in place, and it's my understanding that when the change.
Is that what Mark was sitting in?
Yes,
Oh,
it was disbanded supposedly after it's just what I understand, and so ultimately, because there is still no remedy for Spring Avenue and Buchanan Avenue, okay, that zone, every available resource that touches and protects the residents of those streets is going to be called upon and utilized. And so, is this grandiose procedure here something just for Spring Avenue? Ultimately, we've uncovered a big untruth.
Well, sure. I mean, I agree. It's, I'm sorry to interrupt, but, it seems like
And I think it's on the
it's kind of spitballed, or not spitballed, snowballed rather, into this, now we're going after this group that hasn't been formed. As a city official, I mean, I think we need to take that approach. It's been explained to me the difficulties in starting it and some of the things that go along with it. I can show you some of the ordinances that were in place for the city of Martinsburg, as well as, this is all stuff that was provided by my group. Got some meeting minutes here from the city of Martinsburg as well. And again, I don't think it's impossible. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to start. But saying that, you know, looking at it now, I don't believe that this Stormwater Advisory Council would have prevented it when Eric was, don't get me wrong, we don't know, we don't, but when the project started, it wasn't in place. So, you know, now we're going after something else. I think personally, we should focus on this, but let's focus on the task at hand, which is Spring Avenue, the curb issue. Now, when you were here in May, I'm sorry, let me go on here. You know, you said you were pleased with what Mr. Workman had done on Spring Avenue. So where's the disconnect there? Where are we at in trying to meet Mr. Lopez's needs when your needs have been met?
First of all, you may introduce yourself.
If I may, real quick, a couple things to touch on. So one, the MS4 document that's on the city's website is not dated. There's no official signature, and there's no official date on the document. Terry Falk's name is listed on it, it is typed on the document. In the section I was reading from a moment ago, when it first stated, as a result of the public participation criteria, the city will be assembling the Stormwater Advisory Council. This council will be made up of both city employees as well as general public. And it keeps on going on. This particular section is dated. This particular section is a revision to this permit. And the date of this revision is February 28th, 2012. So, because there's not an origination date on this document, I can't tell you how old this document is. It's most likely, my impression of it, that the city's most likely utilizing the same MS4 permit and responses, you know, each time it's up for review, and they're essentially going through reviewing it. And if anything needs revised or updating is applicable, all revisions were made, or if no revisions are made, that's presented to the manager at the time for signature, or to be approved, their name placed on it, and it's uploaded to the city system. To me, that makes logical sense of how the process would work, and I don't see much issue with that process. Other than the fact that documents published that are not dated, that's somewhat concerning. But there is the revision date where I can, with accuracy, say that the Stormwater Council was a concept as far back as February of 2012. And it appears that it was a concept beyond that, because all the other references I made to it was not revisions, it was part of the original application.
I think the problem with that part there was the MS4 permit was due at the time, that may have been 2019, right? And it started the application. Well, then the original permit got extended, and it's been extended twice now. So that was the original application in 2019 that never went through fully, because that they've had problems. They have to get all that passed first, which I think they're gonna get something passed in 2024, or pretty close. And that's what's really gonna go off the permit. It's the general permit from 2014 to 2019, I believe, was the one that is the general permit that's going out on now, the whole state.
And not to disagree with you, but if that's the permit that general public should be going off of, why is this the permit that's coming up on the city's website under Clarksburg Stormwater Management Program General Permit? Because that's, and we go to the city website, you know, goes under departments, Stormwater Management Program, and then goes to program links and files. Under documents, Clarksburg Stormwater Management Program General Permit pulls up this document. I mean, if that's the actual document that needs to be gone off of, then would love to have a copy of it. Would recommend the city updates the website to reflect that that's the.
This
the correct
actual document is actually on the West Virginia DEP website. You go to the West Virginia Storm, the DEP website, and that document's right on there.
And
It's
not saying that
general
it's
permit
not,
for everybody.
but this is what the city
And
of
that
Clarksburg
is
is representing.
prior, before Paul Jones got here, that is the prior. If you look on there, some of the stuff in sanitary board is dated 2012. We're still working on the
It
website.
says that's the updated one.
Yeah, that one was from, I don't
So the city's misrepresenting information on the
know,
website.
because that was the application that was due at the time before it got extended.
But it says that it's,
Yeah, like I said, I don't want very much need for the manager back and forth on it. I'm just, it's my actual permit, why is it public? Permit is being published to the citizens.
I'm just of the opinion here that we're splitting hairs about a stormwater advisory council when the issue is with the citizen on Spring Avenue. You know, I believe when I met at your house back 2 years ago, or 2 years ago, there was a group of citizens there. Seemed like the discussion was kind of loose and we were talking about the election and whatnot, but, you know, are there citizens, other citizens that want to step forward and talk about their issues? I mean, I know we've heard them from you.
well, you can go out and find them yourself. My job is to represent myself, and the city failed to notify people appropriately even in this meeting, okay? Yes, they posted something on Facebook, but I guess as elected officials, you can take it upon your own course to find everybody else, because I'm speaking for me. If you ask me why I'm not happy, yeah, they fixed his drain, they didn't fix mine, nor the rest of the street. And in addition to that, they put 6 inches of blacktop, okay, across from my house. That's unacceptable for a curb, because it's all concrete to the whole neighborhood. You can't even blacktop, it's against code, as I understand it. Okay, so continuing, okay, Chris Lane can speak for Chris Lane. Yes, we have similarities in our views and our issues. Okay, as in the other neighbors, I can tell you there's a multitude of damages. Okay, how many of them feel so abused and intimidated to come up here because of the treatment that everyone has gotten, and because they're so overwhelmed with the 2 years of disgrace that this has been going through, and even what we're having to go through now, they're scared to death. Okay, and that's just the bottom line of it. Okay, I think that you can tell by the amount of people who signed on to potentially have their curb redone through the city program. Obviously, there's some very, very large issues, but I would, encourage everyone, maybe again, back to your asking if this committee was important. Well, I mean, you shouldn't be asking me what other residents had issues. If that committee was in place, you'd have had the answer to that question already. So I'm gonna start answering for me, okay, let's just keep this going. At the end of the day, there's a multitude of errors that are not able to be identified and corrected this evening, from the MS4 to this to that. Okay, the DEP, okay, right now, let's stop. Okay, the city of Clarksburg, where are you at with the project? As far as you're concerned, you're done working, the project's completed, everything's okay. Okay, where is the city with this project?
Can I interject something?
Sure.
Since the project's been completed, okay, since that project's been done, other than Mr. Lopez and Mr. Lane's issues that they have spread out here tonight, and excuse me, numerous other times, I've had 2 complaints from Spring Ave since this project's been done. Both those issues, nothing to the storm system, or sanitary sewer issues that are on the other side. Other than that, I've had not a single complaint come to Public Works about any flooding issues over there. Just want to interject that, that's the truth, and that's just what I want to let you know. And those calls come in Public Works. 2 issues, both sanitary sewer, both on the property side.
And real quick, if council does recall last July.
Okay, Paul, if anyone, I want to answer to my question first. The question that I asked is this project complete from the city of Clarksburg's behalf?
Yes.
Okay, so the project is complete. Okay, Mr. Bailey, can you start chiming in here for a moment? Okay, on your inspection report, okay, you denoted that the drain, multiple drains had to be repaired, including the one in front of my house, the one across from Chris Lane's, so on. Okay, and then through our conversation, okay, you explained to me as well that there was other stuff that the city had committed to doing that wasn't necessarily captured in the report. Is that correct?
Mr. Brown, was with us while we were conducting our final inspection. And so, when he first prefaced, just for everybody's application, is I represent the clean water SRF program and the funding that goes into it. So while we review everything, the city is ultimately responsible as the owner of the project. So, and my perspective comes from ensuring that the state and federal money that's involved in this project is executed the way it's supposed to be executed, which is for the description of this project. So when we conduct a final inspection, we conduct that with such that the project is substantially complete, or considered substantially complete, meaning that all major items are complete, and potentially there are some items that, small items, or really just checklist items that punch list items that's over. And for instance, the ones that we specifically listed are the ones that we took note of. And in terms of Spring Street, we did note the drains that were talked about, and they were even pointed out to us as we conducted our inspection. And like I told both the gentlemen, Mr. Brown was there and commented on doing some work to adjust the collection of where that drain was on the, I think it was the west side of the road, or the northwest side of the road, if I'm not mistaken. But that item there had not been done yet, of course, because it would still be thought about, okay, what's the solution to it? As we understand it, the structures that were put into place, were put in place in accordance with the specs. Those plans specs do have leeway left or right, of course, and were put back in as close to proximity as they were before. And the field check on site, by the on-site inspectors. So when we do our final inspection, we're looking at just all the work that's been done and highlighting anything in there that either is not done or is continuing to have a problem with your case. So what we read in the final report is what we particularly noted as still could be and should be addressed by the project. But we were also told, of course, that it was, and it sounds like the city did go in and install that catch drain, that thresher on that one side. I'm not sure about the southeast side of the road.
Yeah, that's part of the issue here, is they did one drain, but not the one on my property. Okay, they did lanes and corrected it, but didn't correct mine, and they didn't correct the one at the top of the street as well, that has a concrete wedge jammed in it, and as soon as a snow plow hits it, it's going to dislodge it. Okay, I don't know how that's appropriate, and I want to make sure that I understand as well, Mr. Mayor, when you say that you inspect off of the blueprints, but you don't verify that the blueprints were done correctly. You're just going, this is what the document says, and this is what I'm inspecting. But as to whether the document was appropriate in containing curbs and containing those other sureties and remedies, that isn't what you are inspecting for, and you're not inspecting for the legitimacy of the documents. You're only inspecting A to A and B to B. Is that accurate?
As I said, we're focusing on this project, and we were ensuring that money that was expected to be spent was expended in the way that was approved in the project documents, which are plans and specifications. And any changes or change orders that were approved as part of the project. And that is what conclude our inspections on it. So we don't have any expectation of another inspection other than communicate with the city, about a year after, just to ensure that there are no issues.
Right, and so nor would there need to be. In theory, based upon your assertion, nor would there need to be another inspection. But back to the root of it, during our conversation, again, the city now is saying the project is done on their behalf, and beyond other issues, short of the drain in front of my property, and as we spoke, that was supposed to be repaired, and it isn't. Okay, and so, and even it's plural in the report, drains, okay, and so we want to end the argument here. Okay, and so again, that's just no more, no less from Mr. Bailey. That drain was supposed to be repaired, and it wasn't. And, as to the other issues, the MS4, and whether it's this, there's going to have to be a lot of other detailed investigation, work, and understanding of all this stuff. But at the very basic root of, to your point, Mr. Hyman, what needs done immediately, okay, my drain, the drain at the top of the street in front of the Johnson's house that has the wedge going into it, those both need moved and abutted to the curb. All of the concrete curbs need repaired. Okay, the illegal asphalt, okay, that was used for curbing needs to be taken down, and the appropriate curb needs to be put in place. Okay, the street needs to be graded down so that the drains, okay, and again, Johnny, I don't know how many, there's been 4 different people come to council meetings complaining, and you guys have done a wonderful job, okay, on everything that you do. It ain't on you guys, okay, and that's the truth, okay, but the reality is the street has to be milled so that it can be back to the appropriate level. Again, it's kindergarten, okay, mine, I don't know, again, other neighbors, okay, theirs as well. Okay, in addition to that, there's damages. Okay, we haven't even gotten into the damages during construction that were done. And I got probably 350 photographs, videos, okay, all the stuff illegally staged in yards, stuff destroyed. Then we have the damages from the project. Okay, my stuff has not been drained. Okay, it backs up onto my patio because the drain's clogged with asphalt. Okay, the neighbor's house at the top of the street's flooding. Okay, we all know that, you've heard it. Okay, Miss Romano was here, okay, a year ago, talking about her yards getting flooded, destroyed. Okay, so there's the damages that have to be paid for, and now I'm going to spin back for a minute. Okay, all these errors that we have to correct. Okay, why is the city paying for it? Why are our crews out there doing it? Okay, this is errors by the contractors and the engineers that we've already paid to do this. And so I'm really trying to understand. That's, again, back to you. I'm not mad at you. You're not the one that did the work. And so why aren't we having the people that we've already paid correct their mistakes? And that's called subrogation. Okay, and I understand if we're going to come out and fix it ourselves immediately, okay, but the large reality here is we're all around all this table and, all these common sense errors. Okay, that's not for us to fix. Why did the city come out and fix the drains that the DEP said were wrong? Why did we spend that money with our city crews, fixing all this stuff? Are we taking that bill and giving it to Thrashy?
Have we done?
Are we?
Well, the key was on the one drain that we fixed, it was less expensive for us to do it than it was to get the contractor back in here to do it. And I understand what you're saying, but the fact of the matter is that they did what they were told to do in the drawings that were on the plans. Because they were using a type of a product that did not lend itself to moving itself over a foot. And should we have caught that at some point in time? Probably. But it wasn't actually the contractor's fault. The engineer designed it according to what they thought was, would fit. And it
Shortage of supplies because of COVID, they're manipulating stuff, trying to.
So it was just easier, less expensive and just easier all the way around, and Johnny fixed it. And did a great job in fixing it.
Is this the house on the top of the street you're telling me, Slade?
Yes.
That's the house with bad sanitary lateral coming out of it. It's on their side. It has nothing to do with the sewer system. We have our camera system in it. The property owners there, and we pointed it out to them flat. Their house, this house is a collapsed, cast iron sanitary sewer line.
Yes, but when you look at that property, the way that the project was done, not by our city employees, at the top of Bush Street right here, okay, there was a cliff, literally this high, with no curb, no nothing, and I got videos of water running off of there, okay, like Myrtle Beach. And so they did experience a tremendous amount of water.
They called me one time for flooding.
I understand, but I can just tell you,
So just,
yeah,
I've got no reason to lie.
I'm not trying to lie either, I'm just telling you what they've told me.
That house is a sanitary sewer.
Right, I can just tell you what they told me too, no more, no less. But to the end of, again, the corrective mechanisms that have to happen. The drains have to be moved, the curbs have to be raised, and the street has to be appropriately graded so the stuff drains.
Tom, in the project report under construction and warranty under recommendations deficiencies, it does not say drains. It says the drain inlet on Spring Avenue must be regraded. The city will correct the drain route of pavement, and then the picture that they show is the drain that Johnny fixed.
I don't know what
It
you're
doesn't
talking
have
about.
drains.
It says drains in the one that I have
It
pulled.
says drain.
I don't know which section that you have, but there's multiple sections, and again, with him, and I don't know, so
Final
since
report, I don't see where it says drains.
It
I see
does.
drain, but not drains.
it does, and I don't have that document in front of me, but I think that Mr. Bailey's on here and can concur what our discussion was. Certainly, again, the bottom line of all this, folks, the water goes all past the drains. The drains don't work. No more, no less.
Just as a, can I just make, when I nodded my head to Steve, or to Steve, is that I said they were all done. There is one that is not done on there yet, because we have not done our paving program yet this year. And we agreed up there at the top of St. Clair and Spring Street that we were going to regrade and pave that section because it wasn't draining as we thought it should. Because Johnny was one up and cleaning it out all the time, where there was debris coming over by the drain. And he does that every time that it rains, but as soon as our paving gets here, we're going to regrade that area.
And that's the
So
bottom.
that's the one
Southwest end of Hart Street.
on St. Clair, no, on St. Clair and,
It's St. Clair and Spring, it's the one at the top, it's the tail end of the project on the top side. It's
Under the deficiencies, it says the drain inlet, there's no drains anywhere in the final project.
Well, the ones that actually at the top of the street, we pointed that out to them, they didn't even catch that. We actually-
I have a different set of that, and since you went ahead and brought that up, I'll go ahead and let's ask about that document, because I can't concur what was accurate of that, so let's talk about that document. When was it received by the city?
We received it April 25th or April 26th.
Okay, so, but yet it says it was received April the 6th.
It's just dated April 6th.
Okay, but it says there was email copy sent as well to the engineers and everybody else on that same date.
April 10th, signature, email sent.
Okay, so you guys had that report.
We did not have this report until Thrasher sent it to us.
Okay, so when did Thrasher send it to you?
I just told you, April 25th, April
So they
26th.
sent it to you, so Thrasher kept it for 3 weeks before they sent it to
They
you?
probably assumed that we had
Okay, and so that's back
it.
to,
Since they usually send multiple documents, the same one.
okay, so can you tell me, can you read out loud who that letter is addressed to?
It says, "Dear Mayor and Marino," which I don't understand why. Don't have a clue why it would be dated to Mayor.
Can't tell you.
Okay, and so nobody in the city, okay, it was the paper copy that was mailed here mysteriously vanished, and then no one got the emails on it either. And the only way that anybody from the city even knew about that report was that because one of the other engineers sent it to you 3 weeks later electronically, and we can't account for the receiving of the document or the document being shared by anybody here or know nothing. Is that correct?
That's exactly correct.
Okay, so again, when you're asking why there should be committees, why there needs to be protocols and checks and
I'm
balances.
not asking why, I'm simply saying we will get, we're gonna make that happen.
Okay, again,
I'm saying when the initial report was made, in 2012, correct? Is that the original document?
The original document's not dated. That's a dated revision to the document, it was in 2012.
So, I mean, obviously,
It should at least be dated back.
and I think that's where we're going to get to. I think Drew's gonna put something together, I'm not discounting, what I'm saying is, the issue seems a lot Spring Ave, this seems to be outside of that. You know.
but
The committee wouldn't have got this document here faster if Thrasher assumed that we had it and we did not.
well, but the issues could have been resolved sooner, and the city wouldn't have perjured itself. When I came to meetings, continuing to ask where the update is, where's the new information, and everyone continues to say, we ain't heard anything, we don't have any information. Gee, nobody knows nothing. Well, everyone perjured themselves because you did have information. Where it was at, because you didn't.
Mr. Lopez, you can't perjure yourself if you're on your bed.
Well, okay, there you go. Well, the city, by being elected officials, stating that there was no new information repeatedly during council meetings, at such time that documentation was in hand, should have been in hand, and electronic delivery has been noted, certainly constitutes acknowledgement. And with that constituted acknowledgement of a document in hand of such importance, to continue to say that you don't have any new information over and over and over again, certainly speaks to a lot of remedy that needs to be held in place. And again, that's back to the very issues as to why we have to be here, and we're going through all this over and over and over and over again. So back to end remedy, the drains need fixed, the curbs need fixed, the street needs graded, so the curb drains can drain. That's just.
I have one more, I'm sorry, Chris, if I could. I'd like to ask, I guess I'll forward you, and maybe Drew, if the water doesn't hit the drain, let me go back one time. The last meeting we had, that was in the background, I hate using that term, I do.
Conference room.
There you go.
Council conference room.
I like it. That's what I'm hearing. So the water, when it goes past that drain, where does it go? Tell me where it goes. Does it go down to Harrison and go into a drain and meets up with the stormwater system there?
Yes.
Have you seen it do that? Yes. Have you seen it do
I'm not an engineer.
that? I'm not either.
I don't know where all the water goes. I can tell you that it didn't drain like that before. That the curbs are overwhelmed because it's not draining. I have documentation of water running through paint, 3 yards, because it's over top of the boundaries of the curb, running past the drain and into the drain. So I don't know where it goes. I know there's been multitude of flooding, okay, once you cross that intersection, because that driveway is down to there, okay, and they had, okay, as you can attest, okay, and I think, Mr. Workman gave a very good explanation a while back, and the total flow of water starts at the top of Hammond Highway, okay, where the Mountaineer Mart is, and it all comes down those 3 streets, and they've taken different steps to try to channel the water at different breaks and different places and down to the alleys and yada, 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 because there's tremendous
Sure,
gushes.
it comes down that grade. The inlet that's on Spring Avenue, that water doesn't go into, where, does it connect to that same drain on Harrison? So, in theory, if the water is like raging down Spring, it's gonna go straight down to Harrison unless it's so powerful or so much that it would flow into those inlets that are on Spring,
I
correct?
can
Is
tell
that?
you what it used to do. Used to go straight across Harrison, right down that driveway.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know what driveway you're talking about.
Just go right down to Vermont, that's what it used to go. Doesn't do that anymore. That's what you said.
If I may, would like to be my full-time claim. So, originally,
I'll give you 10 extra minutes. Okay.
Audio difficulties.
And I'll move a little backwards here to touch base on last subject there. Yeah, it does start up Hammond Highway, it does go down multiple streets. There is multiple inlets that all goes into the same piping that all goes to the ultimate discharge. I don't know, I'm not fully familiar with the entire system from Hammond Highway all the way down to the ultimate point, but I can imagine as that system goes from the start at point A down to discharge at point B, the subsequent piping that's buried enlarges in size as it goes.
That's correct.
Just as it picks up those inlets. And to kind of correlate it over into something a little more understandable, if you've got 10 garden hoses and 10 people standing there drinking down the garden hose, to represent each one of those drop inlets, it's pretty easy for an individual to drink out of a garden hose. But if you got one person that plugs off their garden hose, and the next person plugs off their garden hose, because the water is bypassing them, and that last person in line is now going to take the water of 3 garden hoses. It's somewhat tough to swallow. And while that drain will ultimately, accept that water, it does create a cooling effect or a ponding effect when that initial surge hits before that drain will accept the water, because the drains above it is not positioned correctly to where they'll be able to accept the water. And that ponding, that cooling effect is what causes the overrunning of the curbs and causing flooding of the yards. That in conjunction, with what Tommy was saying earlier about the milling and the repaving of the streets, there's dozens of places out in the street where you can look at the edge of the pavement and the curb, and you can actually see where the pavement is sloped up away from the curb, about an inch gap from the curb itself. But you can see in places where a milling machine milled pavement down and the machine actually scratched the curb. You can see where the curb is old, it's weathered, got dirt, debris in it, it's been virtually untouched. And the existing pavement now is higher than where those marks are on the curb. And not saying it happens all at once, but each time the city paves, half inch here, inch there, year, each time the paving event occurs, the height of that street builds. And as a result of that, the curbs are being diminished. The curbs, in my opinion, as I sit here today, I stand by my comments I made in May. Mr. Workman, his crew out there, in my opinion, did a wonderful job, installing the inlet. They installed it correctly. They installed it against the curb where it can accept the water, so the water's not gonna bypass it and overrun the next. They installed a concrete curb by the inlet, and he went ahead and went, beyond and installed asphalt curb over the existing concrete curb there that had been diminished over the years. Because of the diminishment of the curb, that's where I was receiving flooding. After last July, when we came and spoke to council, when that street was milled and it was lowered, I was not experiencing flooding. Had more curb then. It acted as a guardrail and channeled that water on down to the next inlet, let the pond pool down there. That's where Phil and Beth was having the flooding. That's where they spoke out in that July council meeting, complaint of their flooding was going on. Once the asphalt work was completed and the street elevation was raised and it diminished my curb, that's where the water was starting to leave the street over my diminished curb and where I was starting to experience flooding. Similar was happening with Robin Ritter at the top of the street. When the new inlet was put in place, it was a different style inlet than was there before. And the new inlet was allowing the water to sheet drain off the street into her yard, which set at a lower elevation of the street. As we sit here today, an asphalt curb has been placed up there. Now, practically, the asphalt curbs, they channel the water just as well as a concrete curb. And don't have any preference or opposition one way or another, asphalt or concrete. I'm really concerned. Probably raised that, city spec is for concrete curbs. So he's raising the question of why is an asphalt curb acceptable for the city, but it's not acceptable for a resident to install an asphalt curb.
Perfectly reasonable.
So that's the question that we have there.
And in addition, my difference in taste, it looks like garbage. Okay, my whole neighborhood does not have asphalt curbs. That's why we are the type of neighborhood that it is. It's all concrete.
Well,
A lot of it.
I'll agree and disagree with Tom on that.
The only asphalt I've found is the ones that's been done by the city.
The asphalt curb work itself, I think the city does it. I don't think they just hodgepodge it. I think they try to make it as neat, look as presentable as possible. Where it looks poor, where it looks bad, is whenever you got the mixture. You're going from asphalt to concrete to asphalt to concrete to what, you've got these sections, these strips, stuff's not matching up. That's where it looks bad. So I'll like the comments I made at the May council meeting, I stand by them 100%. The new inlet that Public Works installed, I feel it's in the correct place, I feel it's doing its job. The curb that they, placed, that has stopped my flooding. The inlet that they installed, my understanding is stopped with best flooding. The curb that they installed at the top of the street has corrected Robin Ridge flooding. The R3 properties, it's corrected by the efforts of Public Works out there, and I appreciate them for that. One of the reasons, the big reason why I'm here today, two of the reasons mainly, is to see this stormwater advisory council forum. Because I cannot give you the data that was originally, provided to the DEP as, yes, here's what the city of Clarksburg is going to do. And while I can't sit here and say, well, Steve didn't do it, or Mark didn't do it, or Harry didn't do it, or Annette didn't do it, or Mark didn't do it, or whoever before Martin, or for however far back didn't get done, I'm sitting here today just saying, it just simply hasn't been done. And if it was done, I feel that the issues that we're talking about today wouldn't have become such magnitude and polarizing issues, because us as residents would have had an outlet and a place to go to discuss our issues. As you said, you attended a meeting that, yeah, I did post in my garage prior to that early July council meeting, where residents had concerns, they had questions, they had problems. A lot of those work evenings. A lot of those have odd schedules. A lot of those have families that take care of. Not everybody can come up to a council meeting. Not everybody can come to a committee meeting. No, I get a lot. I got personally capable. I'm, familiar with the terminology, familiar with construction, familiar with, how things should be done. So a lot of people there that evening was asking me to come up here and speak for the street, to speak for the issues there. And I don't mind doing that. But this is really what I feel the true back and forth, forum that we've had. What the Stormwater Council should be able to discuss the issues. And I can hear it in some of Tommy's time here tonight. He's got some frustration. And I feel he has a right to have frustration. This has been on for multiple years. And we've all have heard it. But for us as residents of the street, we live it. We live it daily. And not every day we're getting flooded. But there's been several dozen times where I've had 8 to 10 inches of standing water in my backyard over the last year since the street was paved, up until Mr. Workman's crew corrected the inlet and the curb. It was about a year that I was receiving water on a regular basis, and I was living through that. I have deep-seated frustrations of my own over this project because the city publicizes that there's an outlet, an avenue for citizens to talk and communicate with, but it doesn't exist. I myself, from the beginnings of it, reached out what I thought was appropriate channels. And each time was met with, there's not a problem. I started speaking at council, then was met with, there's not a problem. I started on some FOIAs, started finding out there was problems. And then as we sit here, multiple years later, problems have been corrected and addressed. If there was a way to have an open dialogue, like the council, terminology specifies in the MS4, I feel a lot of these issues could have been circumvented. So I feel strongly that moving forward, to not dwell on the past, but to move forward, I do think it's important and critical for the council to be formed as soon as possible, to give any other residents, whether it's myself, Tommy, or the others, the opportunity to speak their concerns. And with the volunteering, I don't want to discredit that. That sounds good. It's an important activity. But I don't know if I don't personally agree that that's a critical step, a critical part to be in place to form the committee.
I think you're gonna need, the city's gonna sit down, because to make that happen in the start of making the corrections, you're gonna have to have its own department with more employees. Right now, you have one MS4 director and Brian Reed. There's gonna have to be a crew that he is under him to go take care of those issues. And that is where we're at right now. They don't have, the public works doesn't have the workers right now to put them on.
I can't formulate that like that.
And that was my suggestion to council, that was my suggestion to Steve Police.
If I may continue, to that point right there, not saying you don't have a valid point right there, but I feel that's a different topic, a different issue there. No, we're talking about being able to have, it could be a monthly meeting for residents to be able to have an open dialogue with the city about issues and concerns. How those issues and concerns are addressed and developed should be a result of that committee communication. No, I don't think we're asking here tonight to fix all the problems in the city. We've talked about a few specific issues and concerns with Spring Avenue. But I think this council, just simply getting informed and opening the dialogue, could help other residents of areas that could be having problems be able to bring those problems to the city. So you guys are aware of them. I'm sure you're aware of a lot of problems, but you might not be aware of every problem that's affecting every resident. And residents might not know how to bring and address those problems to you. If the committee's formed, if the dialogue's in place, that conversation can happen. And as a result of that conversation, then action plans can be developed, construction schedules can be put in place, engineering can be looked at. The city, has a grant writer in place, funding could then be procured. It could be in a special zone, could be affecting a certain, class of residences. There's all kind of factors there that if the discussion happens, doors could be opened that help assist the city with resolving those issues. That's why I feel forming the council as soon as possible is important.
But I made the suggestion to council, and I made the suggestion to Steve Police, that we would hold off until the new city manager, Tiffany, and the new sanitary board attorney started July 1st. July 1st, both of them will start, and then we can really get the ball rolling on, because the new city attorney works with that kind of stuff. Sanitary board attorney, and that's what, this is a sanitary board issue, so council really wouldn't have anything in it. This is all sanitary board. So I suggest to wait for Tiffany to get started and for the new attorney to get started, and then we would work on getting a committee formed.
And I'm not disagreeing.
But I don't think it's one that you can just form today. I don't think it would be useful just to come here and talk. to hear complaints when there's no way for us to work on fixing it
They're
right
the
now.
one
So
responsible.
you're just spinning the wheels like some of the workshops. You're just spinning the wheels. We have no way, we hear you, but we don't have any way to correct it right now. We don't have a plan of getting started to correct it. That's what I'm working on. So just coming here and meeting, that's fine, but you're just gonna spin your wheels of telling us that we have no way of actually correcting it right now.
So maybe that's part of the plan. Part of the plan is, we'll, once the new sanitary board's established, we have, new sanitary board attorney, and Ms. Fell that is taking over as city manager, July 1st, which is not far away. That's maybe the plan moving forward, that sanitary board's attorney, in conjunction with the new city manager, forms this board. Does that satisfy some of those requirements?
Yeah, I mean,
I think,
that has
I feel like that
merit.
would be better than trying to put Steve on it. I was just wait till we have Tiffany start and wait till we have the new attorney start. And then we could get together and get something to get the ball rolling. Especially with people who have different ideas, he's probably taken part of this before in other places, and the attorney has. So that would be what I hit.
And that sounds reasonable. What you just said there, that does sound reasonable. I can agree with that. As a citizen, my frustration comes from council comments I've heard in previous weeks that it's going too complex, too complicated to form something quickly. It takes time without any type of reasoning behind it. The reasoning you just gave there was valid reasoning, and it has a reasonable time frame set in place. What we have heard is that it's next to impossible and we don't know when. That's what we have
The
heard.
problem is city council can't really speak on sanitary board issues. So when you go to the city council on a sanitary board issue, they can't really answer the questions because they don't have the answers from the sanitary board. So that's why they're saying what they say, because they don't have information.
Like I said, that was my initial frustration. Subsequent frustrations at the beginning of the meeting this evening, you didn't lead off with the reason why it can't be formed is waiting on the sanitary attorney and the new city manager. You said the reason it couldn't be formed was because of putting together the volunteering and these cleanup days.
Well, that's still part of it with the other part. There's many different steps to this.
It might take months or longer for this council, the Stormwater Advisory Council, to be effective, to be as effective as you gentlemen want it to be. So I'm throwing it out there. I think, hopes are high at the moment, but,
I mean, I
Being
don't,
effective and being formed is two different things. Finishing the race and starting the race is two different things.
I'm reading in your room.
Being able to establish it, start the dialogue, understand you're not gonna be able to fix an issue during the meeting. You're not gonna be able to, hey, that drain's in place, it's done. I understand that. But the council can keep a running punch list of known issues. Have a punch list available to city department heads, to the engineer, to the grant writer. So if a grant writer sees, potential funding that meets a concern that's on the punch list identified by the council, then wouldn't receiving a large amount of funds open up doors to help you quicker?
that's also where that stormwater tax comes in, because that's MS4 is its own program. So you would have to have its own budget, which we don't have an item for. That would need its own employees, and it's just to focus on stormwater. That's all they would do is focus on that. You're not gonna be able to take Public Works to work on an MS4 set. Public Street Department can't work sanitary board issues.
Then how did the street department, public works install the drain on Spring Ave?
Because we have a sanitary board. The sanitary board is split into two divisions.
Okay.
There's the treatment division, there's the collection system.
So I'm
Collection system
confused
falls
there.
under public works, but it's two separate buckets. It's two
You say they
separate
can't,
entities.
but they can't.
So Johnny has two different kind of workers. He has Public Works and then he has sewer department.
Okay.
The sewer department can work on sanitary board issues.
Okay.
His Public Works department does not work on sanitary sewer issues. They're separate, it's a separate department.
But those are both departments that he oversees.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
So it should be reasonable to still brief him, but just he utilizes the sanitary.
But it would still, like I said
department.
before, like Brian Reed is your MS4 director, he would need, really the way to go would be to get him 2 or 3 employees that could work on just MS4 issues.
Well, why not just let the council that was said was going to be formed, let it be formed? Let Brian, let Mr. Workman, Mr. Brown sit on it, as well as open to the public. Let them identify and discuss the issues.
Well, I know that, but
Why do
you're
we have to
discussing
sign
like
on
the
additional
curbs.
employees?
Who's gonna fix the curbs? It would have to be the MS4 department. So there would have to be a department to fix those curbs. It wouldn't come, what department are you gonna take the curbs out of? Because it can't come out of sanitary board budget. So it would have to come out of an MS4 budget, which is what I said about Martinsburg. They have a stormwater tax that they tax people, and they use that money is solely used for stormwater MS4 issues. It cannot be moved to any other department. It is mainly focused for stormwater issues.
And Clarksburg does not have a stormwater tax.
Clarksburg does not have a stormwater tax. And that is why we're saying that it's complicated right now, because I need to get in, we need to see how to do this without causing the taxpayers a lot.
Okay.
Because there's some companies down in Huntington that pay over $1,000 a month, stormwater fee, brain tax, their industries.
So as we conclude from my behalf, and I know we're kind of to the end of our time here, a couple of things I want to revisit. One, my issue with the laptop, and what you guys did on that curve, is what you had to do, right? And you stopped the water. My gripe isn't on what you did then, that's temporary. It's got to be back to concrete. You stopped the water, which had to be done with the laptop. I ain't complaining about what you did one bit. That was fabulous, okay? Number 2, we've identified here this evening that we have gross financial issues, gross errors, and all kinds of stuff. Violations, not enough money to take care of stuff. Got a whole bunch of problems. Okay, and we have to have immediate remedy. Been 2 years. Tommy Lopez ain't waiting till July 1st, till drains fixed, starting this week. Curbs fixed immediately. Street graded. 1 day longer that anybody waits to allow my property to be damaged, you're already acknowledging it. We've acknowledged the financial issues, the violation issues, the yada, yada, yada. So every day that goes on, that it's not repaired and corrected immediately, understand the jeopardy that the city's in. Because I'm done playing games. He can come up here and care about the committee all he wants. I'm out of energy. We're in violation. Things weren't done right. We don't have the money to cover the projects. We need employees. We need this. We need that. Fix the streets immediately. Out of common energy.
Just want to confirm, are you acknowledging that there's continues to be issues on Spring Avenue? Days? Okay. Okay.
Okay, well, you just heard what he said. Mr. Bailey, you on there still?
I gotta go by his report that he sent.
Okay, I'm going, Mr. Bailey,
You're on mute there, Dan, if you can hear us.
okay, forgive him. So the city's contention, even though you've got all these violations, even though you've suppressed information, even though there's pictures, the drains, water runs past the drains, even though you guys all know, we want public here, that you covered my drains with asphalt. And they can't drain because they're covered with asphalt. That there's nothing else that's being done. Okay, and he ain't talking, we know the conversation from the DEP report. Okay, you gave me wrong information on the emails. You guys know all the stuff. There's no curbs. You guys blacktop out of code. Right? So there's nothing that's gonna be done. You blacktopped out of code. That's all I gotta say, everybody. Nothing's gonna be done. You've heard it again. You blacktopped out of code, but nothing's gonna be done. That's just the smallest, tiniest example of the infutility of coming here to have these kinds of conversations. Councilman Worth and Councilman Hyman, you are here this evening, and you have again heard the outrage, as with our new city manager. You are hearing that we are not in code compliance with many things, but there's still no remedy, and we're not doing nothing. That's the fundamental fault and flaw of what's going on in our city, and what's been going on here for 2 years. Everybody's here has heard 2 hours of, we don't have the right money, we don't have the forms, we don't have the committee, we don't this, we don't that, we don't nothing. And at the end of the day, everyone's going, yeah, we're not gonna do nothing. You guys saw the results of the election yesterday. Okay, let me tell you something. The citizens are not pleased with a lot of stuff that's going on in this very chamber. Not just of 2 people. Okay, again, you guys are hearing and knowing the truth. You've been hearing it for 2 years. It's egregious. It's incumbent upon you guys and council to start correcting things. Again, you're not doing anything, but you know there's errors. You're in violation of your own city code of blacktop, right? That's already been acknowledged here. But you're not correcting or doing nothing. The drains aren't collecting the water. You're not doing nothing. You asphalted over top of multiple people's drains, and the streets won't drain, but you're not doing nothing. Okay, so I'm gonna put that solution of what your employees have decided to say and do, and based upon all the other history that you guys know and that everybody's aware of, that I didn't even bring up here tonight, from the suppressed emails and all the other horrific stuff that's gone on. So you two as council people, go back, tell the other council people what you heard here tonight, make them watch this, but the city of Clarksburg, despite knowing they're in violation of their own code, has concluded that they're not going to do nothing. So please handle that as best you see fit. And Walton, thank you for being here this evening. Look forward to creating continued situations where we bring remedy in the future. And we look forward to working with you as you work with these very same issues, and then we try to better our city. So apologies in advance for this being your first meeting, but it is still with love. And we all love each other. We're all trying to find good solutions. No more, no less. But that's all I can say.
All right. Well, this will conclude the meeting. I appreciate everyone coming out, and thank you.
Thank you.